I've literally been sitting here talking to myself for the last like 15 seconds because I hit go live, but apparently I didn't hit go live twice. So if you can see me, let me know because I have no idea because I don't have YouTube up. Wait, that was YouTube. I just turned it off. So let me know if you can see me. So I can see a couple people typing in the comments. What's up, you guys? This should be fun. Give people a few more minutes. I'm curious, so let me know where you're coming from if you found out about this on TikTok or Instagram, because those are the only two places I mentioned this. I didn't mention it on my Facebook because that's where all my family is and I don't like them in my business too much. And then my mom gets mad because I do things and I don't tell her until after the fact. Then I have to explain to my mom, it makes me less nervous when you don't know. Got not notified through YouTube. That makes sense if you're already subscribed. Just open the app and you're right there. That's terrifying. Yeah, I'm still in denial mode after having gone viral a couple months back. You're about 20 minutes from Kenosha. Explain Wisconsin to me because I don't understand places where people live and they have snow and they live their own purpose. Where is everyone from? How am I doing? I'm doing very well. You set an alarm. I had to set an alarm too to remind me because I was getting antsy at like 7:30. So I've been watching Wizards of Waverly Place on Disney Plus to pass the time. Oklahoma. I have friends in Oklahoma, Stillwater, Florida. I was in Florida. Columbia, South Carolina. I was born there. I was born on Fort Jackson, actually. We lived in Columbia until I was about 6, moved to Sumter, lived there for 2 years, and then in 95 we moved to Charlotte. Thank you. My best friend tells me I still look like I have anxiety. She is so supportive. Get you a best friend who will tell it like it is and won't sugarcoat. Montgomery, Alabama. I have to pass through Montgomery every time I drive to the Charlotte area. I actually stayed in Montgomery in a hotel when Hurricane Ida hit because it took 12 hours to get from New Orleans to Montgomery. So I stayed overnight in a hotel right outside Montgomery. I'm not even feeling nervous, honestly. I'm sleepy. So, okay, I made a mistake setting this at 8:30, thinking, oh, 8:30, that'll be a great time. I'll be wide awake. No. No, my body automatically wakes up at like 5:45 every morning because I go walking or running. Usually a mix of both every morning. So my body's used, and my alarm goes off at 6 a.m. anyway. Because if I don't set an early alarm, I won't get up. So my body automatically wakes up at like 5:45 every single morning. So yeah. What up, and lies? You need sleep, bro. Don't I though? I'm a night owl and it's bad. I wake up early and then I don't wind down until like midnight. But still manage to get enough sleep to function during the week. What is that beeping? Oh, that's my iPad. Sweet. What time is it? It's 8:36. Let's get started. So it seems like most of you came from somewhere where I'm at. So either TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube. So most of you probably know who I am internet-wise, but just in case there are any new faces, hello, my name is Savannah. This is Savvy on TikTok. So yeah, I'm a content creator mainly on TikTok. I also post up to Instagram. I'm a little slack on YouTube. Sorry, it's been a busy couple months. And I do have a podcast that's like unofficially on hold. There's no reason for it to be on hold. I just like haven't had time to like sit down and record something, which is why I'm actually doing this on YouTube Live, because there's just a lot to talk about. And I don't have a lot of free time right now where I can like record something, edit it, and then post it. So it's easier to just do everything on a live thing and then just have it all out at one time. And then TikTok, the views are not reliable. I think I'm like shadow banned right now. So I could post like many different clips on TikTok if I wanted to, but who knows who would actually see it. So why not just do it all on YouTube Live? That way everyone can see it wherever. So, yep, my name is Savannah, content creator. I live in New Orleans. As I mentioned before, I was born in Columbia, South Carolina. I was raised in Charlotte, so I spent pretty much my entire adult life, adolescence, childhood in Charlotte, North Carolina. I moved to the Gulf Coast January 2020, so a couple months before the pandemic. I stayed in the Kill, Mississippi, which is kind of right on the state line between Mississippi and Louisiana a little bit, for about 2.5 months. I did my whole quarantine lockdown thing in Destrehan, which is a little town west of New Orleans. And then I finally found a place here in the city in April of 2020. So I've officially been living in the city of New Orleans since April 2020. So, and I love it. I absolutely love it. It is Wonderland. I think I described in a TikTok one time, if Wonderland were a haunted house, it would be New Orleans. I feel like that's accurate. And I know you're here somewhere. Let me know how accurate that statement is. If Wonderland were a haunted house, it would be New Orleans. That's, yeah, it's spooky and yet magical all at the same time. So why are we here? As many of you know, also let me know how sound does, because I don't sit still very well and my microphone is right here, but it picks up very well. So if I start to get a little bit quieter, just say something, I can move closer. But we are here to talk about the Kyle Rittenhouse case and the verdict that came down yesterday. I mentioned on TikTok about a week ago, that I didn't want to say anything until the verdict was read, because I wanted to make sure I had all of the information before I just started spouting off my opinion. There were people whom I follow on TikTok who were making very predictive statements, which is cool. If you're comfortable doing that, do it. You know, people are saying he will be acquitted. You know, this will be this, that, and the third. Excuse me. I'm not comfortable doing that. I'm not that confident, I should say. So I wanted to wait until the verdict was read. That way I could kind of wrap my head around everything that's happened. And I just wanted to talk. And I know people have opinions, people have questions, but I really just wanted to kind of get my thoughts about this case kind of out there, because I know people were interested in hearing what I had to say, which is strange in and of itself. Like, thank you for wanting my opinion, but the fact that you want my opinion, it's still weird. It's still weird. Like, you care what I think? Why? Kyle should sue for defamation. We're going to talk about all that. So the Kyle Rittenhouse case, for those who do not know, Kyle Rittenhouse, August 25th, 2020, we had the riots and protests going on in Kenosha, Wisconsin last year. Jacob Blake, who was shot 7 times in the back by the cops. We're not going to get into the weeds of that. That has nothing to do with this. And as we all know, summer 2020 was a hot freaking mess following what happened with George Floyd. People were protesting, which is cool. Protest all you want. I am not one for protest or boycotts. That's just not how I roll. But following a lot of those protests were people rioting, particularly in places like Portland and Seattle, Chicago, people just burning down buildings, businesses, people died, lost their lives, just a mess. And then Kenosha happened with Jacob Blake, and obviously, you know, BLM comes in, they want to protest and whatnot, and people took it as an opportunity to just burn things down. And that's where Kyle Rittenhouse comes in, and let's talk about it. So while he was there on the 25th, he shot 3 people, Joseph Rosenbaum, Anthony Huber, Gage Grosskreutz, and I'm going to butcher his name all evening, just so you know. And we all saw the videos. We all have opinions on what we saw, and then he was charged with, I believe it was 5 felonies, 2 misdemeanors, and then the trial happened these last 3 weeks. We had a verdict. He's not guilty. So I want to share something real quick. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I was out shopping, and then I was sitting in my car for a lengthy amount of time, because I feel like that's what you do when you're an adult, is you just sit in your car for a while. And I think this video really sums up why I wanted to do this and why I want to talk about this. So bring this up real quick. The sound should be cooperating. It is cooperating. So while I was sitting in my car doing absolutely nothing in between stores, because why not, I noticed, oh, here we go.
Families of the...
Let's start that over.
What is your visceral reaction to the verdict today?
So this is MSNBC. This is the president and CEO.
Of the victim,
Let me know if you can hear it.
With this outcome, we all witnessed and seen on screen what happened. But it's a true tale of what we need to do moving forward. Here's a judge that's been elected for the past 3 days, mostly unopposed. I hope that community take note and recognize that this particular judge is not providing justice for that community. In addition to that, the jury pool question is a real question that we must embrace in a way in which we increase the number of people who register to vote and willing to serve on juries. It was an injustice. This was worse than the Emmett Till trial. This was worse to so many trials where we know for a fact individuals committed murder, and yet they were not brought to justice. It is unfortunate, but this is America.
Do you think that it emboldens other people to pick up guns and go to protests or, you know, communities of color to terrorize folks? I mean, I feel like one of the dangerous precedents this sets is people who don't live in a particular community will go to where unrest is after a police shooting. We've seen police shootings happen far too often.
Well, this is the legacy of the Trump administration. It is about
yes,
the
if you don't know,
otherness
MSNBC got banned
so
from
many
the
people,
courtroom.
whether it's in Charlottesville or the synagogue
I don't feel bad about
in
that at all. They
Pittsburgh,
deserve
or in
that.
this case, where people feel like it is okay to display their white supremacist behavior in the public square. Unfortunately for the families of the victims of this murder. Here's a 17-year-old who came across state lines with a firearm that he purchased illegally, driven by his mother, to a community that did not invite
I'm laughing
him,
at the comments.
allegedly protecting property that was not his property, and to support law enforcement officers who didn't need support. And so there is no logical reason for him to be there. The fact that this judge dismissed the armed charges, which should not have shouldn't have been dismissed. The real question here is, was there a federal crime committed? Should the Biden administration be bringing federal charges in this case? Do we have a U.S. attorney that's been appointed in this jurisdictions so that we can look at whether or not this young man should be charged? You and I both know, had this person been African American or Latino, he would be behind bars tonight. And unfortunately, the families of the victims will not receive justice.
What is the role of civil rights organizations in this particular moment? How do you see your role with an organization like the NAACP that's connected to this long history? I see this case as a part of the history that we're all living through. How do you see your place in it?
Well, it is definitely a part of history living through. In fact, the reason why the NAACP was created, because on average, an African American was being lynched every day when we were created in 1909. And so for our advocacy voice, one, we must reform our criminal justice systems. Two, in terms of the communities that we represent, that we must encourage a heightened engagement, particularly when you have judges who are elected or jury pools that are not as diverse as necessary. The sad part of what we're witnessing right now is the potential outcome of the Ahmaud Arbery killing, that those two individuals actually did. We've seen that on tape. But unfortunately, in that community with 25% African Americans, only one juror, we are unfortunately faced with the same outcome. We cannot have a justice system that's unjust. We have a legal system that's void of justice for African Americans and Latinos across the country, and in many cases, poor whites as well.
Okay, that was interesting. Yeah, I was sitting in my car and just scrolling through Twitter and saw someone quote tweet that video, watched it, and I was like, oh God, I have to share this. Yeah. Some of the comments. Before we even get into what I think, why I think what I think, we need to get some things out of the way. We need to settle some things. So let's talk about some untruths, things that are not true, things that are just outright lies, and some myths. Because as we all know, the videos for this incident have been on the web since literally almost since the day it happened. Like less than 24 hours after these shootings, we were able to get video on Twitter, online, of the shootings. And I know a lot of us, we watched these videos and it was just self-defense. Like, why are we even talking about it? This is a clear-cut case of self-defense. And the problem with our media, at least the problem that I find, is that they've forgotten who they serve. They've forgotten that their job is to, oh, I can't see how many people. There are 300 of y'all. Anyway, sidetrack, squirrel. They've forgotten who they serve. They've forgotten that their job is to keep us informed. Their job is not to serve the government, but to serve us, like we the people. And they've lost focus. The same with the NAACP. I didn't know that man's name until I watched that video. Derek Johnson, I think is what it said. I don't mess with the NAACP. Like, I feel like they've lost focus. They've lost perspective. They're trying really hard to stay relevant instead of staying true to their cause. And the same with the media. They've lost their purpose. They've lost perspective. They were so quick to push out information that just wasn't true, like blatantly not true. And the fact that people still believe a lot of these things, even after the verdict has been read, even after all the testimony was out there for the whole world to see, like there's no excuse at this point to remain ignorant. So we're just going to go through a couple of myths that we've heard about this case. Number one, that his mother drove him to Kenosha. No, she did not. No, she did not. We learned in the trial, I think it was pretty evident to a lot of us that she did not. We knew. I don't remember how we knew, But most of us knew that she did not drive him to Kenosha, that he drove himself to Kenosha. We learned during the trial that Kyle actually drove to Kenosha. Remember, this happened on August 25th. We learned that he drove himself to Kenosha on the 24th to work. And I think most of us knew that he actually worked in Kenosha. So he drove himself to work on the 24th and then stayed the night at a friend's house and woke up in Kenosha on the 25th. So his mother never drove him to Kenosha. His mom bought him the gun. That was the second thing that everyone was saying immediately. His mom bought him the gun. No, she did not. Why people were still saying this when Dominic Black was charged with providing, like Dominic Black, who was a friend of Kyle Rittenhouse, was charged with providing him the weapon that Kyle used in the shootings. Yet Dominic Black was charged with providing Kyle Rittenhouse the weapon, yet people are still saying his mom brought him the weapon, are still saying that the weapon crossed state lines. Dominic Black, who lives in Kenosha, provided Kyle Rittenhouse with the weapon. Like, that tells you right there that the weapon was in Kenosha, never left Kenosha, was always in Kenosha with Dominic Black. The gun didn't touch Kyle's hands until the 25th when they went to get the weapons. Like, Dominic Black, I just want to say it again, Dominic Black was charged with providing him the weapons, yet people still believe that Kyle's mom was the one who provided him with the weapon. It'll be interesting to see what they do with those charges, especially since that weapons charge against Kyle was dismissed. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with Dominic Black's charges. I personally think they should just drop everything at this point. There's no point, but that's just me. So his mother never drove him to Kenosha. His mom did not buy him the gun. That ties into the thing that everyone is still saying to this day, that the NAACP guy said he crossed state lines with the gun. No, we have known this for over a year. The gun never left Wisconsin. The gun was purchased in Wisconsin. The gun was stored in Wisconsin. Kyle got the gun in Wisconsin, and then after the shooting, the gun stayed in Wisconsin. The gun never crossed state lines. Again, Dominic Black was charged with providing him with the weapon. He is the one that had the gun in his possession. The other one is that, he was illegally possessing the weapon. No, according to Wisconsin state law, he was legally able to possess the weapon. And Wisconsin is also an open carry state, so there's no law against him possessing the weapon and then carrying it openly. So we'll talk more about that charge. So we'll come back. We'll circle back to that charge. He was there to stir up trouble. From Kyle's own words, from the very beginning, because we had the video from Richard McGinnis, who interviewed Kyle, and Kyle said his own mouth that they were there to protect that business and he was there to provide medical aid. We had pictures from earlier that day that he was there cleaning up graffiti. And now we know that he was already in Kenosha. So the evidence was there. He was there to clean up graffiti. He was there to protect a business, and he was there to provide medical aid, all of which he did. So people are still choosing to believe. There's no evidence to support it. There was no testimony that spoke to him wanting to stir up trouble and just cause a big scene. All the evidence suggested, why are you auto-focusing? There was no evidence to suggest anything like that. All the evidence corroborated his story and the video that he was there to protect the business, provide medical aid. So, no, he was not there to stir up trouble. That's not true. We know this now. People, something else, I don't know if I would call this a myth or a lie, but people who kept saying, well, he shouldn't have been there. No one shouldn't have been there. That's the entire point. Kyle shouldn't have been there. No one shouldn't have been there. That's another big myth and lie that people love to say, well, it was a peaceful protest. People were setting things on fire. That's how the whole shooting started, with Kyle Rittenhouse going to put out a dumpster fire. People are setting things on fire, burning buildings, hurting people, damaging property. This wasn't a peaceful protest. This was a riot. Peaceful protest is people marching in the streets, chanting. That's a protest. Burning down buildings, damaging property, destroying people's livelihoods, destroying people's businesses, destroying churches. Like that's not a protest. That's a riot. That's a crime. That's criminal activity. No one should have been there. No one should have had to be there. Two random guys should have had to ask Nick Smith to protect his property. But for whatever reason, the governor of Wisconsin did not do right by the people, and people felt like they had to take matters into their own hands, which is why Kyle Rittenhouse was there. Kyle Rittenhouse was there because two business owners of color, by the way, wanted someone to protect their property because they had lost so much from another business the night before. But no one should have been there. That's the whole point. Had the governor and the mayor done their job to protect the people and the businesses of Kenosha, Kyle wouldn't have had to be there. But we can't go back in time. Hindsight is 2020. Hopefully they'll know for the next time because, we know no one learns anything. There will be a next time. So what are some other myths? Let me know in the comments. Some other things you've heard people say that is just dumb. That doesn't make any sense. Andrew Coffey. Oh, we'll talk about him. Worry you not. We will talk about him. I'm trying to think of other things that people have said that's just, there you go, right there. The victims were Black. I don't know where people got that from. We knew who they were very, very quickly as well. So we'll get into the weeds of the charges, but so the two men who died and the other third one who was shot and injured, all three of them were white. The only Black person involved was Jump Kick Man. If you've seen the videos, you'll see that there's one person who jump kicks Kyle, and the prosecution claimed they were never able to identify this individual. I'm not buying it. I'm sorry. Apparently, a report came out a couple days ago that Jump Kick Man identified himself, went to the prosecutor's office, and offered to testify in exchange for immunity or a deal of some sort, and they declined. But the prosecutors, Binger and I think Krause was the other one, said in open court they were never able to identify him, so much so that when you look at Kyle's charges, it says unknown male. So that stinks to high heaven. But yeah, the three guys that died, the two guys that died, and then Gage, who was shot and lost, pretty much his 90% of his bicep, they were all white. And then Kyle is white. I've heard reports that he is also half Hispanic. But what difference does it make? This did not involve, the only two people of color who were involved were the two business owners. Don't ask me to pronounce their names. It's just not happening. I know one of them is named Sam. That's about it. Hollow points explode in their targets. Yeah, that was so weird. They mentioned that because I think it's full, I'm not big on ammunition. So I'm waiting for someone to say it in the chat. The bullets, the ammunition he had, I think was a Full Metal Jacket. Yeah, he had Sam and Sal were the two business owners. They are South Asian descent. So yeah, Full Metal Jacket. So it was weird in the trial. The bullets Kyle used were Full Metal Jacket bullets, but the prosecutor kept talking about hollow points. Like, why didn't you use hollow points? And he's like, man, I didn't even load the weapon. Like, why are you asking these questions? But, and what about the Zaminskis? There's so much. So, who are the Zaminskis? I just remember the one guy, Zaminski. I can never remember his first name. But Zaminski is actually the one who fired the first shot. So, Joseph Rosenbaum comes chasing Kyle. Kyle hears a shot. We don't know where the shot was being aimed at. He doesn't know where the shot is being aimed at, but he doesn't need to figure it out. He turns around, sees Rosenbaum is still coming at him, aims his weapon. Rosenbaum doesn't stop. Kyle turns around, continues running, turns around, and that's when Rosenbaum gets shot. And yeah, he's dead. It didn't, yeah. He only bought the gun because he thought it looked cool. Why else would you buy an AR-15? I mean, it's one of the top self-defense weapons in the country, and that's not a secret. I mean, I'm a 5'1" female. If I'm going to buy a gun for self-defense, I would immediately look at an AR-15. Why? Number one, yeah, because it looks cool. It's scarier than me. That's the point. I am not intimidating unless I'm hungry. So, yeah, I want a gun that's scarier looking than me. A Glock is not scarier looking than me. An AR-15 is scarier looking than me. Also, I have no upper body strength, and the AR-15 is famous for its little to no recoil. And I've held a shotgun before. I've never held a rifle. I've shot a handgun and I've shot a revolver. I prefer the control I had with a shotgun more than I preferred with the handgun. So I will probably definitely go for a rifle just because I like control. And I didn't feel like I had control with a handgun. But that's just me. But yeah, like that's why people buy AR-15s, because they do look cool. They're easy to use and they're great for beginners. That's just common sense. So yeah, myths and lies from the trial that people are still believing, even though all the evidence is out there. You can literally go and watch the entire trial on YouTube. You can even go watch the entire trial and get lawyer commentary, because that's how I viewed the trial last week. The first week of the trial, I just followed along on Twitter because I didn't think I'd be able to work and then have the trial playing at the same time. But I kind of gave in Monday of last week, and I was watching it on Rekieta Law. And he had a panel of lawyers every day just explaining what was going on, which was perfect. I have a good idea of what's happening and I understand, but it's very helpful for a lot of things that were just kind of like blowing over my head, especially when it came to things like objections and understanding procedure. Rekieta Law was badass. Yes, it was. I lived on Rekieta Law for the last 2 weeks. Yes, if you have not watched any part of the trial, I recommend going to Rekieta Law's channel and just watching all of his videos of the trial, especially if you're not familiar with law, because the law, to me, the law is not difficult, but it can get complicated. So if you're not sure, if you don't understand, I would definitely go to his channel and watch his stream, because he has a panel of lawyers that literally explain everything as it's happening. And it was super, super helpful. So we got some of the myths and lies out of the way. He never crossed state lines. His mother literally had nothing to do with it, because we still hear people saying, why hasn't his mother been charged? Because his mother literally had nothing to do with it. He didn't see his mother again until maybe an hour after the shooting, when he went home because he tried to surrender to the police. That's another lie. People saying the police just let him go. Not technically. I mean, the police literally were kind of like crippled, for lack of a better word. They weren't allowed to do their job to the extent that they were able to do their job. They heard about a shooting, but they really didn't have any details. So when Kyle went to surrender, they dismissed him. They didn't realize he was a shooter that everyone was talking about. I mean, it's Wisconsin. It's an open carry state. He has his AR-15. So they're not shocked by seeing someone walking around with a gun. Like, that's no big deal. Like, a lot of people out there were armed. So they dismissed him. And so what did he do? He went home. He went back to Antioch. His mom drove him to the police station. He surrendered like an hour or two later. So a lot of people thinking, oh, well, he fled. Well, look, he didn't have a choice. He tried to surrender. The police wouldn't listen. He went to the next best police station, which was home. What can you do? The kid's trying to do the right thing and nothing's working out. Literally after he shot Rosenbaum, he was trying to do the right thing, running to the police to get help and to get to safety and to turn himself in. And that's when Anthony Huber came after him. That's when Jump Kick Man came after him. That's when Gage came after him. The fact that Gage knew this kid was trying to run to the police, because Gage Grosskreutz literally asked him, "What are you doing?" He said he was going to the police. But so, and if anyone's in this chat and there's something I said that you just did not agree with, I can't help you at this point. I don't understand why you're still choosing to believe lies when literally you can just go and watch all the different testimony. If you don't want to watch it, I'm sure you can pull up transcripts somewhere, because that's pretty much what I did with the Michael Brown grand jury. I just read transcripts. Why did I do that? Who has that kind of time? Apparently I did. But so we got some of the missing lies out the way. Let's talk about something else. Because I think that when it comes to a lot of these emotional cases, people tend to not understand, with respect to the law, what's relevant and what's not relevant. So let's talk about that for a hot second. What is your opinion on the verdict? Just join. We're getting there. Stay with me. We're going to get there, I promise. But before we get to what my opinion is, I want to make sure we get some facts in place. I don't want to just spout off at the mouth about what my opinion is. I want to make sure that I have a firm foundation. That's just me. That's just how I work. So what's relevant and what's not relevant? Number one, and I think this is going to be a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, but the point of view of the writers, not relevant. What they were thinking when they saw Kyle, not relevant. Literally doesn't matter, because their point of view is not on trial. Kyle's is. Kyle's point of view, what he was perceiving when Rosenbaum was coming at him, what he was thinking when Jump Kick Man decided he wanted to put his foot in his face, what Kyle was thinking when Anthony Huber came at him with a skateboard, what Kyle was thinking when Gage pointed a gun at him. That's the only point of view that literally matters. Well, they thought he was an active shooter. Doesn't matter. Literally doesn't matter. Completely irrelevant what they were thinking, because that's not what's in question with respect to the law. The law doesn't talk about, when we're talking about the law of self-defense, we're not talking about what other people are thinking, but the person who had to make that decision to defend themselves. What were they thinking? Did they have a reasonable belief that their life was in jeopardy and they had to make that decision? Now, what the writers were thinking, if they were mistaken, if they were unsure, it doesn't matter. Does not matter. Completely irrelevant. Video games. Oh my gosh. Okay, so y'all, if you have not watched Kyle's testimony, yes, it's like 5 hours long. Go watch it, especially the cross-examination. The questions that Binger was asking were kind of ridiculous. He tried to make a point that Kyle just wanted to be a part of something cool, and he kept bringing up video games, but it was dumb. Anyways, so what the writers were thinking, their point of view, not relevant. What happened before the shootings? Because a lot of people want to talk about, well, why was he there? What was he doing? How did he get? Not relevant. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why he was there. We know why he was there. He said on video why he was there. People testified why he was there. He was there to protect a business. He was there to provide medical aid. We literally have him on video yelling, medic, 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 friendly, friendly. You know, people testified to him, you know, helping people wrap bandages or recommend people go to the hospital. He helped one lady with her ankle. Like, we know all this, but it does not matter. Because number one, he had a right to be there. He had a literal right to be there. The curfew charge was dismissed. I'm not even going to take that even seriously. If it was such a serious charge, I don't understand why the prosecution didn't bring evidence with respect to it. They didn't. That charge literally got dismissed before the defense started their case. So what happened before the shooting started? Irrelevant. Doesn't matter. But he was there to look sharp. Doesn't matter. Well, he brought a gun. Doesn't matter. Literally doesn't matter. From the time Rosenbaum started chasing him, the time the altercation, we'll just use that word, because that's a word I'm used to using, by the time the altercation started to where it ended, that is all that's relevant. Just that space of time. I think it was like 2 minutes and like 52 seconds. It was super quick. So what happened after the shootings? Not relevant. Doesn't matter. Once the shooting's over, what happens after that is literally irrelevant. The situation in itself is done. So what do we know about after the shooting is he tried to surrender, couldn't surrender. Dominant Black took him home. His mom drove him to the police station where he met with an officer, and he was trying to get in touch with Kenosha police so he could surrender. But people were trying to bring up when he got out on bail and he went to a bar and took a picture, and he was like, see, this doesn't matter. That has nothing to do with the shooting. This is months later after the fact. Like, it has nothing to do with his state of mind that evening. And that's what's in question, the state of mind. Like, doesn't matter. And then when we're talking about what happened before the shooting, people want to talk about where Kyle said or may have said something about people who are robbing a CVS or something. I don't know. It doesn't matter either way. It doesn't matter. It's not relevant. That whatever he was saying in that video literally had nothing to do with his state of mind at the time of the shootings. Doesn't matter. My stepsister's boyfriend went from Mississippi to New York to protest. He crossed a ton of state lines. People are allowed to cross any state anytime. Yes, they are. Amen. Another thing that is not relevant, this might confuse some people, is whether or not he was lawfully allowed to carry the weapon. Doesn't matter. Let's say the Wisconsin law is not written the way it's written, that he was actually not legally allowed to carry. Doesn't matter. So he could have been found guilty on that misdemeanor charge. Let's say if the law was not written the way it was written. He could have been found guilty on that charge and yet still found not guilty on everything else. Because while he may have not been lawfully allowed to carry the weapon, that does not negate his right to self-defense. You have a right to defend yourself. Like, that's sacrosanct. Like, you have a right to defend yourself however you see fit. If you believe you are in danger of great bodily harm or death, you are allowed to defend yourself. A child is home alone and someone's trying to break into the house. Kid knows this combination to the safe where the gun is. The law says he's not allowed to possess that weapon. That in and of itself is a misdemeanor. But he can still use the gun to protect himself. Like, no one's questioning that. So let's say he wasn't lawfully allowed to carry the gun, which he was. It doesn't change the fact that he still has a right to self-defense. The lawfulness of him having the gun or not being able to have the gun has nothing to do with Rosenbaum's state of mind when he made the decision to charge at Kyle. What is he supposed to do? Well, I'm not lawfully allowed to possess this weapon. I have to drop it and hope for the best. No. No, that's not how this works. So, not relevant. The only thing that's really relevant is Kyle's state of mind, what he was thinking, and what happened in that space of time from the time the situation with Rosenbaum started until Gage Grosskreutz was shot. That space of time is all that matters. And what do we know what happened? We know that Kyle went over there to put out a dumpster fire. Joseph Rosenbaum, who had been making threats to him earlier that evening, saw Kyle and decided to chase him for reasons unknown. I'm assuming he was not in his right mind, because I can't imagine someone in their right mind deciding they're going to chase someone with a gun. I don't care if it's an AR-15, a pistol, a revolver, what have you. Like, I'm assuming he's not in his right mind. He decided to give chase, and then Kyle retreats. So now that we know that Kyle has tried to retreat, stand your ground is out the window. Because stand your ground says that you do not have a duty to retreat, but Kyle retreated, so we know it's not a stand your ground case. He's trying to retreat. He even turns around to level his gun at Rosenbaum to deter him. He's not doing anything. Kyle is yelling, friendly, 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 and Rosenbaum is not stopping. And then he turns around and shoots off 4 shots, and I think it was like 3/4 of a second, which is not unusual. If you ask a police officer who's involved in a police shooting and you ask them how many times they fire, they usually don't give you an accurate number. They don't know. Because if anyone who's trained with weapons or has any kind of common sense, they know it's not one and done. You know, that's in the movies where you shoot someone one time and then they dramatically fall and then all of a sudden the threat is over. No, that's not how it works at all. I believe Michael Brown was shot 6 times before he eventually fell to the ground and died. You shoot until the threat is no longer a threat. That's just how that works. So Kyle was backed into a corner. He shoots Rosenbaum. Rosenbaum falls to the ground. Kyle circles around a car. They go back to Rosenbaum. He calls Dominic Black on the phone and tells him that he just shot someone or he killed someone. I'm not sure. I can't remember what the wording was. Which he's like, why didn't you call 911? I don't think the police were in a good position to roll up to any of that. So he called the last number he called, which was Dominic Black, and told him that he just shot someone. And so Kyle figured instead of calling 911, it would just be easier to go to the police. And he knew the police were a couple blocks away. So he decided he was going to go run, get help, get the police, turn himself in, get to safety. At some point, he runs into Gage Grosskreutz, doesn't realize it's him until after. And because Gage is recording on his phone and he asks him, you know, where's he going, what he's doing. And as he's running, people are yelling, stop him, cranium him, get that kid. Basically threatening him as he's trying to run to the police. Like, it's very clear that he's trying to get the police. You can see the flashing lights in the distance. Gage asks him what he's doing. He tells him that he's trying to get to the police. And as he's running, I think that's when we see people throwing things at him. Jump kick man, he tries to shoot jump kick man, he misses. Then we lose jump kick man. Anthony comes up to him with a skateboard, hits him in the back of the neck. At this point, Kyle's already on the ground, so retreating is no longer an option. Like, he can't go anywhere. He's on the ground. Someone's foot's trying to come into his face. A skateboard's trying to come at him. He shoots Anthony Huber one time up here, and he dies. And then Gage is kind of right behind him. And Gage at first puts his hands up like this. Kyle lowers the weapon at a ready position. And then Gage comes at him with the gun. And that's when Kyle shoots and vaporizes his bicep. Those were Gage's words on the stand, that his bicep was vaporized. And then Rekieta Law on the panel just ate that up for the rest of the trial. The prosecutor acted like the skateboard wasn't a threat. Honestly, I think he knew better. I think he was trying to convince the jury that the skateboard wasn't a threat. But I think if there's any adult on that jury, and obviously they're all adults because in order to serve on a jury, you have to be registered to vote, which you have to be 18 years of age, so a legal adult. Hello, a skateboard has to be strong enough to support the weight of a fully grown, at least an average sized adult male. You can use anything as a deadly weapon. So it's a lot. That's, yeah. But he tried it and failed, thank God. But so he shoots off Gage's arm and then proceeds to run to the police where they turn him away. He goes back to Car Source. He runs into the arms of I don't even remember her name, but I think we were calling her Grambo after her testimony. The older lady who testified for the defense, who was absolutely amazing on the stand. And yeah, I think we were calling her like Grambo. Like, her name has been literally lost in the weeds. She's Grambo. Ran into her arms, and at some point he meets up with Dominic Black again, and Dominic Black is the one who takes him home. So another thing that we have to kind of get out the way, because this is still on people's minds, and we saw this in the NAACP video. Racism. What does this have to do with racism? How does racism in general? Why is my face so red here? Is this the lighting? Is that my undertone? Do I have red undertones? Squirrel. Racism has absolutely nothing to do with this case. Literally nothing. Almost next to nothing. The two victims who died and the one who lost a bicep, they were all white. The only person that was black was Jump Kick Man, but he was unidentifiable. So we're not even going to factor him in. So unidentifiable that when the charges are listed, he is listed as unknown male. Like, so he's out. The only other Black person that was involved is the guy they called Yellow Pants, who accused Kyle of pointing his gun at him. But when Yellow Pants demonstrated, and this is all on video, they showed it at trial, when Yellow Pants demonstrated how Kyle had his gun pointed, he showed him his gun like this, so at a low ready position. So that's not pointing. I mean, if you've ever seen someone who open carries a rifle, they always have it barrel down at a low ready position. So, you know, they're not pointing at anyone, they're not pointing at anything, they're not aiming, they're not getting ready to shoot. Sauerkraut. So the victims that everyone's talking about, none of them are white. I think the only thing people can say, well, it was a Black Lives Matter protest. This was not a protest, this was a riot. These were not people rioting on behalf of Black lives. These were people who saw an opportunity to be destructive and decided to take advantage. As a matter of fact, Joseph Rosenbaum was shouting the N-word, shoot me N-word, shoot me N-word. Like, the person that everyone's calling JoJo, you know, rest in peace, like, that's the racist one. He was the one that was shouting a racial slur at Kyle and everyone else, shoot me N-word, shoot me N-word. But Kyle's a racist. It doesn't make any sense. The only way that people can connect this to race, because there's no connection to race, this has nothing to do with race. You can't even connect it to a Black Lives Matter protest, because this wasn't a protest, this was a riot. It's through hypotheticals. And I think we're seeing that a lot on Twitter right now, where people saying, well, if this were a Black man, you know, he would be in jail right now. And someone brought up Andrew Coffey, fourth, I believe. So on the same day Kyle was acquitted, a man in Florida was also acquitted. So a Gifford man who claimed he was defending himself and his girlfriend when he fired shots at deputies during an early morning raid in 2017 was acquitted Friday of charges that carried a life prison term. 4 years. A jury found Andrew A.J. Coffey IV, 27, not guilty of second-degree felony murder, 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder of a law enforcement officer by discharging a firearm, and 1 count of shooting or throwing a deadly missile. In a separate proceeding Friday, the same jury convicted Coffey IV of 1 count of possession of a firearm by a felon. So everyone's saying, well, this was a Black man, he would have been murdered, or he wouldn't have been found guilty. This Black man claimed self-defense when deputies stormed into his apartment. His girlfriend died in the crossfire, and I believe he was also charged with, like, because she died, I forget what the charge is called, but she died because all of this was happening, and he was charged with that as well. And he got acquitted of those charges. Now, he was found guilty of the felony charge, but I think that's important when you want to relate it to the Kyle Rittenhouse case, because Kyle Rittenhouse also had a gun charge. Because everyone's saying, well, he had a gun. It's not self-defense because he brought the gun. Like I said, whether or not he was lawfully allowed to carry the weapon does not negate his right to self-defense. And I think we can see that here in Coffey's case, and that he was not legally allowed to carry the weapon. He was found guilty of, 1 count of possession of a firearm by a felon. That's a just guilty verdict. I mean, if you're a felon, you have a firearm, that's a just guilty verdict. Now, he is facing up to 30 years in prison for that charge. I think that's excessive, but I'm not Florida. Given the circumstances, honestly, if he spent any time in prison during this, I would just give him time served and just let him go about his life. Who's Antoine Smith? I just saw someone say, someone block Antoine Smith. I don't know what that means. Anyways, so he's found guilty of this. He was found not guilty of all the charges pertaining to the actual shooting. He was found not guilty of all the charges pertaining to the actual shooting. He was found guilty of the gun possession charge. So while he was unlawfully carrying or unlawfully possessing a weapon, that does not negate his right to self-defense. It's basically what the jury was telling him, was saying. You're not allowed to carry this weapon, but you still have the right to defend yourself. And the same thing applies to Kyle. Whether or not you believe the judge was right in dismissing the charge, which the judge was right for dismissing the charge, the law is very clear, and the prosecution knew the law was clear. They were playing fast and loose. And when the judge called them on their bluff, they backed down, and so he dismissed it. So there's a piece of the law, and I think, I forget who it was saying, the defense was seizing on the exception. Like, you can't seize, it's the law. It's the law as it was written. Some people have been calling it a loophole. Like, no, it's not a loophole. A loophole is when you find a way around it. No, this is literally it. This is the law. The law says that a 16 and 17-year-old can possess or carry a long-barreled shotgun or rifle, and they define a long-barreled rifle as being longer than 16 inches, which most AR-15s are 16 inches or longer. I've never heard of one being longer, but then again, I'm not that familiar. But yeah, when the judge said, hey, let's measure it, because asking the jury to know how to measure the barrel of a rifle, that's just ludicrous. But when the judge said, hey, let's measure it now, they backed down very, very quickly. And so, yeah, it was a ridiculous charge to begin with. But either way, let's say that piece of the law wasn't there. He still has a right to defend himself. Like, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. But that's the only way people can tie this to race, is that they make up hypotheticals. Well, hypothetically speaking, if this were a black man or if this were anything else, we had a black man who was acquitted the same day. And this is a case that I feel like Black Lives Matter would have seized on. Why is it that we didn't hear his name until the verdict? Especially given this case is very similar to Breonna Taylor. And I believe his charges were also dropped, the boyfriend, because he shot at cops. Shot a cop in the leg, actually. And oh, I see. That person everyone's talking about. Let him stay. Let's see what happens. No, that's the person we want to stay. Maybe they'll learn something new. Leave Antoine alone. We'll see what happens. So yeah, why we weren't hearing about Antoine Coffey before all of this is beyond me. This is because this is the type of case that Black Lives Matter would have seized on, but didn't. So to me, that's just very interesting. But yeah, that's the only way people can tie this to race, is to make up hypothetical situations that may or may not ever happen, and then try to shut down the conversation. So ridiculous. So let's talk about the charge. What was he actually charged with? My personal opinion, I believe he was overcharged. I think they tried to go overboard with the charges, which seems to be a theme with these politically charged cases. George Zimmerman comes to mind. They tried to, they charged him with second-degree murder. To me, that case is clear-cut self-defense as well. Like, if you know the facts of the case, it's self-defense. Tragic, didn't have to go down that way. Sad, but self-defense. They charged him with second-degree murder, but honestly, I'm thinking, when I was looking at this case, I'm like, the most you could charge him with is manslaughter. Like, this is a manslaughter case, a clear manslaughter case. If you know the facts of the case, like, it's manslaughter. But they tried to charge him with second-degree murder, and yeah, they ended up losing that one. I mean, that was just bound to be a not guilty verdict based on the facts of that case. But I think they overcharged Kyle. immensely. So he was charged with first-degree reckless homicide against Joseph Rosenbaum, punishable by up to 65 years in prison. First-degree recklessly endangering safety against Richard McGinnis, the reporter who actually testified for the state. Ended up being a really big help to the defense. That charge, in my mind, was honestly very weird because the bullet they were talking about that could have potentially hurt Richard McGinnis was one that went through Rosenbaum. What's he supposed to do? I thought that was a really stupid charge. That one punishable by up to 17 years. First degree intentional homicide against Anthony Huber. He was the one with the skateboard. So that charge is very different than the one against Rosenbaum, because first degree reckless homicide against Rosenbaum, first degree intentional homicide against Anthony Huber, punishable by a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole, which I don't think that's unconstitutional because he was a minor at the time of the offense. So they would have to give him, so I think life without the possibility of parole, death penalty and life without the possibility of parole is considered unconstitutional when we're talking about minors and how old they were at the time of the offense, but I have to look that up. First degree recklessly endangering safety against an unknown male. So jump kick man. An attempted first degree intentional homicide against Gage Grosskreutz, punishable by up to 65 years, and then the 2 misdemeanors. So all of those were felonies and then 2 misdemeanors. Possession of a dangerous weapon by a person under 18, that was dismissed last Friday. And then failure to comply with an emergency order from state or local government, that was dismissed right before the defense presented their case. So those were the charges against Kyle Rittenhouse. I'm curious, let me know in the chat, what other charges have you heard people saying he should have been charged with? Let me know while I get a drink of water because I'm thirsty. It's called bootstrapping, adding as many charges to the main charge. It's interesting. I learned this from personal experience. Don't ask. You can commit one offense and yet there'd be like 5 separate charges attached to that one offense. It's ridiculous. Alabama v. Miller is a Supreme Court case for the minors being sentenced to life without parole. I'm pretty sure they have to be sentenced. They can't be sentenced without parole. It has to be a chance. I need to look it up. Now I'm curious. Now I'll look it up tomorrow because I'll be here all night looking that up and reading things. No, you have to sleep. You have to go to church tomorrow because we missed church last week. Leave me alone, Anne. I know you're still here. Crossing state lines. A lot of people thought he should have been charged with something with respect to the weapon crossing state lines. As we know, the gun never left Kenosha. So he got the gun in Wisconsin and never left Wisconsin. A lot of people seem to think that there should have been charges associated with him going to another state. No, like freedom of movement, First Amendment, like you can go wherever you want. There is no law that says you can't cross state lines. I will be guilty of that almost every few months, considering how many times I go back and forth to Mississippi. It should be like in the UK, if you get charged with murder, that's it. They cannot charge you with lesser charges for the same offense. I would have to do a whole separate post on that one. I do not agree with lesser charges. Whenever you're in a criminal case and you're in trial, they can tack on lesser charges. I don't agree with that at all. I think that's disrespectful. Capital murder. A lot of people thought he should have been charged with capital murder. I know a lot of people saying he should get charged with the death penalty. Again, he was a minor. He was 17 years of age. It is unconstitutional to sentence a minor to death. But yeah, those are the ones I heard as well. A lot of people right now are screaming about federal charges because what's his name? I think he was a representative or a senator or something, someone from Washington, basically saying that the DOJ needs to look into federal charges. What federal charges? There are no civil rights violations, obviously. We don't have capital murder or death penalty in Wisconsin. It's a city of 100,000 people. It's not small. That's small. I mean, it depends on where you live. I live in New Orleans. New Orleans is about 300,000, somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000. But I also came from Charlotte, which is too big for its own good. So 100,000 to some people would seem small. There are parts of Charlotte that are about 300,000, that are about 100K. Jaron Adler. Yeah, he was screaming about federal charges. There are no federal gun charges. I think the closest thing they could think of they could do to a federal gun charge would be a straw purchase for the gun. So how was the gun purchased? The gun was purchased this way. Kyle gave Dominic Black the money to purchase the gun, and then, so what is a straw purchase? So basically a straw purchase would be like for someone who's not legally allowed to buy the gun themselves, whether they're underage or they might have a criminal record, they're not, or they're on parole, something. They're not allowed to purchase a weapon. So what they'll do is they'll have someone purchase the weapon for them and then give them the weapon. But that's not what happened. Kyle gave Dominic Black the money for the weapon because the weapon was going to be his. However, Dominic Black didn't immediately give the gun to Kyle. He maintained possession and ownership of the gun, and Kyle testified in open court that the plan was when Kyle turned 18 that they would do a private sale and Dominic Black would sell him the gun. So that's not a straw purchase. There's no crime there. You know, Binger tried to trip him up, say, oh, you did that because you knew you couldn't legally possess it. And Kyle's like, no, I knew I couldn't buy it. Y'all keep talking to Antoine. That he is saying there were organizations that were right there when Kyle was there that night. They were at the courthouse waiting for him last night. They were there. They were telling the whole story right there online. I don't know what you're talking about, but it really doesn't matter what they have to say. We literally have the entire situation on video. We have the entire Rosenbaum shooting on video. We have what happened with Jump Kick Man, Anthony Engage on video. And we have multiple people in court who are able to testify and corroborate and provide a foundation for those videos. So whatever it is they were having to say, like, why didn't they could have gone to the prosecution and offered themselves as witnesses. So, but they didn't. And there's a reason for that. The prosecution's not going to put anyone on the stand that's not helpful to their case. So if they had something helpful to say, and if they presented themselves to the prosecutor's office, they would have been called to the stand. But whatever it is they have to say, it doesn't matter. Everything's on video. And as Gage Grosskreutz says, video does not lie. You feel me that he had someone else purchase the gun. Usually when that happens in places like Chicago, they end up in prison for multiple lifetimes. That's because it was not a crime the way they purchased the gun. Kyle only gave him the money for the gun. Dominic Black purchased the gun, and Dominic Black maintained possession and ownership of the gun. That's not a crime. A crime would be if Kyle gave him the money to buy the gun, and then after the purchase or after the sale from the gun store, wherever they went, Dominic Black gave him the weapon. That would be illegal. But giving him the money to purchase the weapon and then Dominic Black maintaining ownership of the weapon, not a crime. And then planning to sell the gun back to Kyle when he turned 18, not a crime. That's by the book legal. And also, I wouldn't compare any place to Chicago. Chicago has some of the worst laws when it comes to guns. The whole case was a hoax to initiate Kyle into the KKK. Oh, buddy, I don't know what time it is where you're at, but I would go to sleep. No. No. Y'all are really... Yo, the KKK is not as big of a deal as people want to make it out to be. They're literally doing nothing. Every now and then, the KKK comes out and they'll protest or they'll make themselves known and seen. But for the most part, they're a bunch of old dudes not bothering with anyone. They're not. No. There are plenty of things to be scared of. The KKK, isn't it? Where even was I? We were talking about the charges. So we listed the charges. That's what he was charged with, those 5 felonies, 2 misdemeanors. The 2 misdemeanors were dismissed in court. Why were they dismissed? The curfew charge was dismissed because the prosecution didn't bring any evidence with respect to it, and the defense caught it. So right when the state rested, they made a motion to dismiss the curfew charge on the basis of the state not presenting any evidence with respect to the curfew charge. All they had was one guy testifying saying there was a curfew, but no evidence suggesting it was a lawful order. So that's why it was dismissed. And then the gun charge was dismissed last Friday because the state basically got caught playing fast and loose with the law. They completely ignore the part of the law that says he was literally lawfully allowed to carry the weapon because he was 17 years old and it was a long-barreled rifle. I mean, keep in mind, because I know some people, everyone's from different places, but the culture with respect to guns is different across the United States. And I can't remember how Wisconsin voted this last election, but Wisconsin is basically a red state. It's very much conservative values, stuff like that. So that's Wisconsin. So, and I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up, is they don't realize that culture with respect to guns is different across the United States. So if you go to California, different parts of California, it's even different in different states. So some of your more cittier places in California, seeing someone walking around open carry is not normal. But if you go to some of these more rural parts, especially in the South, seeing people open carry is not that big of a deal. It's normal. And if you've been brought up and raised around guns and you've been taught gun safety, then you know what it looks like when someone is not getting ready to shoot. That was another thing. Going back to myths and lies, is that people were saying, well, he was the one that brought a gun, and once you bring a gun, you can't claim self-defense. Let's talk about self-defense real quick, because I don't think people understand, and I want to get that out the way before I give my own personal opinion. Let's talk self-defense. So I don't think people have a good grasp on what it means, and I just so happen to have... This is the Wisconsin state law with respect to self-defense. Catch it real quick. I'm going to put this link in the chat so you can go and read it yourself if this is too small, because some of you might be watching on your phone, some on your laptop and iPad. I have no idea, but I wanted you to be able to kind of see it. But this is what the law says with respect to self-defense. So let's just go through it real quick. So, a person is privileged to threaten or intentionally use force against another for the purpose of preventing or terminating what the person reasonably believes to be an unlawful interference with his or her person by such other person. The actor may intentionally use only such force or threat thereof as the actor reasonably believes is necessary to prevent or terminate the interference. The actor may not intentionally use force which is intended or likely to cause death or great bodily harm unless the actor reasonably believes that such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or herself. This law is pretty much written the same across all 50 states with respect to self-defense. If your state does not have self-defense written somewhere in the law, then you need to write a legislator. But this is pretty much how it's written across the board. A couple of words might be changed, but the language is pretty copy and paste. Basically, that says if you believe that you're in a situation where someone is threatening your life or great bodily harm, you can use force. Some states say you can meet force with force. But this is Wisconsin state law. A person is privileged to threaten. So when Kyle turned around and he aimed the gun at Rittenhouse, or intentionally used force when he shot him, use force against anyone for the purpose of preventing or terminating what the person reasonably believes to be an unlawful interference. I think it was Chris Cuomo who had an interview today or the day before or yesterday with, just show Rekieta's video. He explains, go to Rekieta's, I know what you're talking about. Rekieta Law's YouTube channel, which is amazing. Just watch a lot of his videos. Another good one would be, I never get his name right, Andrew Bronca. He is like, he's on Twitter a lot, Law of Self-Defense. I know some of y'all know who I'm talking about. And if you do, can you like at him or share his name in the chat, Andrew Bronca? He talks a lot about self-defense. I think he runs legal insurrection. So I'm getting all these. And I've been following this man for years. I should know this. But yeah, so a person is privileged to threaten or intentionally use force against another for the purpose of preventing or terminating what the person reasonably believes to be an unlawful interference with his or her by such other person. So and I was talking earlier about relevant and what's not, and I mentioned that what the rioters were thinking when they were chasing Kyle, it's literally not relevant to the law, especially if Kyle is claiming self-defense. What the person reasonably believes to be an unlawful interference with his or her person by such other person. So basically, if you reasonably believe that your life is in jeopardy, you are allowed to use self-defense. And that's the question the jury had to ask. Did Kyle reasonably believe his life was in jeopardy? And then Chris Cuomo, CNN, that's the right Cuomo, isn't it? One of the Cuomos, whichever one is on CNN. He had an interview with Mark Richards, who was Kyle's defense attorney. And he mentioned how he's like, why would Rosenbaum chase him, trying to play off like, why would he chase him? He's like, oh, well, to beat him up. Great death or bodily harm. Great bodily harm or death. Like, you have the right to use force, which is intended to prevent great bodily harm or death. That means getting beat up. The state attorney had the audacity to even suggest that Kyle should have just taken the beating. Or he should have, dropped the gun and used his fists. I think anyone who's ever taken a gun safety course or has any kind of understanding of weapons is that if you have a weapon and you're getting ready to get in an altercation, do not drop your weapon. Don't, especially if you have a bullet chamber, because you don't know what's going to happen once you drop that weapon. The video shows him being almost grabbed from the back, and Kyle turned just in time. The medical examiner found, I think it was gunpowder. Anyways, Joseph Rosenbaum had a wound to his hand where the bullet literally went through and out his pinky, I believe. So and said that he had to be his hand had to either be near the gun or on the barrel. And Kyle testified that he grabbed his gun, and that's when he shot. So I don't know what you would think if someone's reaching for your gun, if that person means you great bodily harm or death, but apparently to some people that's unreasonable to think that. But anyways, let us continue. So that is what it says in 1. In this subsection, that talks about dwelling place or place of business. Not relevant. You can skip it. So if an actor intentionally uses force, great bodily harm, this is talking about, place of business, your your dwelling place, a place of business, motor vehicle, that doesn't matter. Person with whom the force was used as the actor's dwelling, doesn't matter. The presumption described in par AR does not apply if any of the following also applies, so it doesn't matter. We go to section 2 of the law, talking about provocation. If you watch any of the trial, and if you watch Recato Law, you will know that the state trying to introduce provocation in the jury instructions to the jury was a big deal. A lot of those lawyers were worried, and I was worried because I know how to read the law. I understand it. I get it. This is what I do for fun because I have nothing else better to do. What provocation means with respect to the law, they were worried that people might define provocation as Kyle just being present at the riots that night, that's provocation, or him having a gun is provocation. But this is how the law defines provocation. Provocation affects the privilege of self-defense as follows. A person who engages in unlawful conduct of a type likely to provoke others to attack him or her and thereby does provoke an attack is not entitled to claim the privilege of self-defense. So the state was trying to make the claim using a crappy looking still photo from the drone footage. There was controversy over the drone footage. We will get into that later. Saying, look, he's pointing his gun at Zaminski. Zaminski, who was never called as a witness, who's actually facing charges for arson, who's actually the first one to fire the first shot. Yeah, they're like going crazy in Portland right now. It's always Portland. I don't know what it is with Portland. Portland doesn't take care of itself. Portland needs a skincare routine. Like, I don't know what's wrong with Portland. Everything's wrong with Portland, Oregon. But yeah, they were trying to say that that was provocation, that's what started it. You know, Kyle pointed his gun at Zaminski. Yet this was something they introduced late. And when I say late, the state introduced this as evidence in their closing arguments. This wasn't something they brought up at all when they presented their case that first week. It wasn't something that's ever been brought up. All of a sudden, we have this drone footage that showed up in the middle of trial, and now the state is trying to say, look, on this grainy little photo where you can barely see anything, Kyle is pointing his weapon at Zaminski, which is crazy to me that they would even introduce that, because in order to introduce this theory, you're basically calling all your other witnesses liars. Like everyone that testified for the state who said that Kyle never pointed his gun at anyone, that it was Rosenbaum who started it. Like everyone who's saying this, that's testifying, you're basically calling all these other people liars, and that this grainy photo where you really can't see anything is telling the truth. I thought that was just weird, but that's just me. So the privilege lost by provocation may be regained if the actor in good faith withdraws from the fight and gives adequate notice thereof to his or her assailant. So let's say Kyle did point the gun at Zaminski, and Rosenbaum somehow saw that he pointed his gun at Zaminski and decided to take it upon himself to attack Kyle. Not Zaminski, but Rosenbaum decides that when he sees Kyle pointing the gun at Zaminski, that he has to attack Kyle. Kyle retreats. At that moment, he can reclaim self-defense, because that's what the law is saying. Let's say Kyle provoked the altercation. The moment Kyle, in that moment, Kyle can't claim self-defense, but the moment Kyle retreats from the fight and tries to get away, and Rosenbaum won't stop, Kyle can regain his right to self-defense. Does that make sense? It makes sense to me. And I don't even know how things make sense to me. So does it make sense to y'all? Does that make sense? You can regret, if you provoke an attack, you lose your right to self-defense, but you can regain your right to self-defense if you retreat from the fight. That's the law. Unfortunately, some people just do not understand that their emotions and opinions don't trump the actual law. I'm gonna leave that up there for a little while because that's important. And I think that's how I have to look at a lot of this, because there's a lot of emotions that are tied into this, but I'm like, okay, well, what does the law actually say? Because when you're looking at a lot of these cases, people want to get their emotions tied up into it, their personal beliefs, their own personal agendas. No, what does the law say? The law says that, let's say Kyle did provoke the attack. Once he retreated, he can claim self-defense. That's what the law says. The law literally says if Kyle provoked the attack, he can regain self-defense if he retreated, and he did. Not only did he try to retreat, but he tried to deter Rosenbaum away from him, and it didn't work. So, and that's pretty much it. Those are the pieces of the law that apply to Kyle. There's a lot going on into that. It talks about defense of a third person, which does not apply to Kyle. It talks about, using self-defense if you're trying to prevent someone from committing suicide. Doesn't apply to Kyle. In this section, unlawful means either I know what the word means, but I can't pronounce it. Or expressly prohibited by criminal law or both. Doesn't really apply to Kyle. And then it goes on to talk about defense of property and protection against retail theft. Doesn't apply to Kyle because he doesn't own the business. But what does apply to Kyle is when it's talking about him defending himself against great bodily death and harm. And we can also talk about provocation since the state brought it up to the jury. At the same time, doesn't apply to Kyle. We have absolutely no proof that he provoked the attack. According to witness testimony, he did not. And even with the little grainy photo that the state had trying to show, oh, look, he did provoke it. He pointed his gun at Zaminski. He regains his right to claim self-defense because he retreated. That's the law. Whether you like it or not. Whether you agree with it or not. That's the law. And let's say you are here and you don't agree with that. You want to agree with that because this could be you. There's a reason why this is written into law. This is a civil right here. What is a civil right? I should know this definition by heart. I want to make sure I get it correct. A civil right is the rights of citizens to political and social freedom and equality. That's not what I'm looking for. This is what I'm looking for. Civil and political rights are a class of rights that protect individuals' freedoms from infringement by government, social organizations, and private individuals. The way I have seen it defined before is that a civil right is a right that's inherent. It's not a right that is given to you, but it is a right that is given by God. That is a civil right. That makes sense? That's the way I've heard it defined. The right to defend yourself, your life, and your property is not a right that is granted by the government, but it is a civil right. But it is so important, a civil right, that it has to be written into law so that the public knows they are allowed to defend themselves. So let's say you don't agree with Kyle, with what Kyle did. That's the law. That's the law as it's written. And you want this law to be as it's written because one day it could be you. You have to you're put in a position where you have to make a choice, them or me. And you're always going to choose you. And you would much rather want to live in a country where your right to defend yourself, the right to defend yourself is protected. So we got rid of some lies and some myths. We talked about what's relevant and what's not. We talked about how racism has absolutely no part in this whatsoever. We went over the charges. We talked about what is self-defense, how it's defined by law. Self-defense is part of the Second Amendment. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we have a Second Amendment. And honestly, I think this case is a big display of why the Second Amendment is important. The government was not there to do its job. The people had to take matters into their own hands. Had the government done their job, Kyle Rittenhouse wouldn't have had to be there. That's just my personal opinion. And speaking of my personal opinion, now that we've laid a foundation, we've gotten a lot of lies out the way. What are my honest opinions on Kyle Rittenhouse, this case, the verdict? How do I feel about it? I want to start off by saying, and I think people need to understand this because justice is not an outcome. Justice is a process. So if we say justice is served, it's not you got the outcome that you wanted, but the process is complete. It's done what it's supposed to do. Do I feel like justice has been served in this case? No. I do not think justice has been served in this case. I think this entire case was a great miscarriage of justice. And what I mean by that is that he should have never been charged in the first place. He never should have been charged in the first place. And I might lose some followers for that one, but I'll say it again. I believe this was a great miscarriage of justice because he never should have been charged in the first place. It was very clear from the get-go that this was a clear-cut case of self-defense. Like, this is the most self-defense-y case I've ever seen. Like, it was very clear. There was no ambiguity in it. There was no, well, I don't know. No, it's very clear self-defense. We saw from the very beginning that it was Rosenbaum who chased him and that he was basically cornered and had to make a decision. We saw that he was running to the police, and we saw that it was Jump Kick Man. Or he either fell to the ground, people took advantage of him being vulnerable in that vulnerable position, Jump Kick Man coming to his face. We saw Anthony Huber come at him with a skateboard. We saw Gage Grosskreutz aim a weapon at his head, and that's when he got shot. We saw all of this. It was very clearly self-defense. Very clearly self-defense. Like, obviously self-defense. So clear in the self-defense that the prosecution literally had to lie in their closing statements and their opening statements. I missed opening statements, but I know Binger I think it was Binger who did the opening statement. One of them in the opening statement said that Kyle chased Joseph Rosenbaum. How can you say something like that when literally your entire case is video evidence? How? When I heard that he said that, I'm like, you realize the jury is about to see all of the video evidence, correct? You realize that the jury is going to hear from people who are literally there that night, not just from people who were there that night, but people who took the video, not just people who took video, but people who took photographs. No, the dude who testified for the defense, I think his name was DeBruin, he had the speech impediment. That was hands down my favorite piece of testimony. He was amazing. He basically called the prosecution out on their, excuse my French, their bullshit. Like, beautifully done. So much so that they were rattled during cross. But anyways, yeah, there were a lot of lies that were pushed in opening statements and in closing statements. So clear-cut self-defense that you have to tell lies in your closing and opening statements. You have to misrepresent the law, trying to push the jury to believe that Kyle being present with a gun is enough for provocation. And I see a lot of people have a tendency to believe that. It's another myth and a lie we can attack. First off, Wisconsin is open carry, and that's just the culture of the state. So, you have a right to carry a gun openly if you are legally allowed to possess the weapon, which Kyle was. But just seeing someone with a weapon is not provocation. I went on vacation a month ago. I don't like clowns. I don't do clowns. The clowns are scary. Like, people that bring clowns to their children's birthday party, like, you literally have a grown man in makeup and pajamas at your child's birthday party. Make it make sense. What part of that is cute? I don't like clowns. And on top of that, they had clowns with chainsaws. That's, to me, is the scariest. I'm weird because I look forward to seeing it anytime I go to a haunted attraction. But that's the scariest thing to me, is clowns with chainsaws. I get scared for reasons unknown. So am I allowed, because I'm scared and it terrifies and it frightens me, am I allowed to go up to that person and attack them? Because no. Just seeing something frightening is not cause for provocation. You see a young man carrying a weapon, you don't have the right to go up to that person and attack them or try to take their weapon. Like, that's not how this works, especially when that person has a legal constitutional right to carry and own that weapon. Well, not own, but carry it. Like, it doesn't work like that. I'm sorry for people who actually believe that Kyle being there just being present with a gun was provocation or negates his right to self-defense. That's not how this works. You literally have a gun for self-defense. Like, that's the whole point of carrying a weapon, is for self-defense, not because you're anticipating a fight, but in the event that you might have one. It's like, you know, carrying an umbrella on a cloudy day. You don't carry an umbrella because you're anticipating rain. You're carrying an umbrella in the chance that there might be rain. You don't want to have to use the umbrella, but you'd rather have the umbrella and not need it than need it and not have it. It's the same thing with carrying a weapon. Carrying the weapon for just in case you have to defend yourself. You'd rather have it and, you know, have it and not need it than need it and not have it. You have a right to carry your weapon. That's not enough for provocation. People don't get to just run up to you and try to steal your weapon because they see you with the weapon and they're scared. That doesn't even make any sense. So it was Binger in his closing statement who said something like, if you bring a gun to a weapon, you don't have the right to claim self-defense. It was something to that effect. No, that's not how this works. There were a lot of lies and a lot of mistruths and a lot of sneaky things that happened in this trial. This never should have been brought to trial. He never should have been charged. They never had a case. People trying to say, oh, well, he got acquitted because of white supremacy. No, he got acquitted because the evidence just wasn't there for a conviction. There was nothing there's no possible way to convict him on anything that they were presenting. The evidence just wasn't there. The evidence was so absent that the state's witnesses backed the defense. I was following along on Twitter the first week because I wasn't able to watch. Well, I didn't think I'd be able to watch it. I didn't think I'd be able to work and watch it at the same time, and just following different updates. I think it was Andrew Bronca whom I was following. And at one point, I think a lot of us were, and just a show of hands, how many people were wondering, especially during that first week, are they trying to blow this trial on purpose? Our good friend Antoine, you cannot corner a person with a military assault rifle. We call that suicide in the streets. No one got cornered, boo-boo. You're not listening to any. He didn't corner anyone. He was actually the one who got cornered. I think that's what you're saying. Military assault rifle. An AR-15 is not a military assault rifle. It's a civilian rifle. It's just a scary looking one. It's a 223 rifle. It's just a regular 223 with some extra things to make it look scary. You know? That's it. It's a civilian rifle. It's not military grade. A military assault rifle will be fully automatic. It's just an AR-15 is just a semi-automatic rifle. It's just your basic rifle. It's nothing. It's designed for civilian use. It's designed to be easy for civilians to use. Like I said, I think it's still the #1 self-defense rifle in the country that people buy for self-defense. Because one, it's extremely easy to use, especially for females, because I am a female who has absolutely no upper body strength. The little to no recoil, that in and of itself is attractive. An AR-15 is a modern sporting rifle. Yep. You don't hunt deers with an AR-15 shooting 293s. You can. You absolutely can. Yep, it is because it is so user-friendly and very little recoil. But yeah, it's just your regular semi-automatic weapon. So take your regular semi-automatic Glock and make it a rifle. But yeah, it's a sporting rifle, it's a hunting rifle, it's a self-defense rifle. I think the only thing I would hunt out here, because I live in New Orleans, would be gator. I would love to go on a gator hunt, though. I mean, I don't know if I'd actually want to shoot a gator. I just want to be in the boat. Does that make sense? I'm strange. I really can't wait to see the lawsuits that Kyle will be bringing against the media. Speaking of the media, can we talk about the media for a hot second? And just that was the biggest miscarriage of justice, was the media, not just jumping the gun to vilify this kid, and not just the media, but politicians. We had Joe Biden, who was a presidential candidate last year, basically equate this guy with equate this 17-year-old child. I'm 34 years old, 17 is a child, with white supremacy. We have, politicians, the typical ones, your AOCs, Cori Bush, the one whose first name I can never pronounce, Ariana, I think it's Ariana. Her name is just spelled different. Ariana Presley. The other one in Minnesota that no one likes, all screaming white supremacy. Well, the facts of the case were saying otherwise. So quick to push this narrative, and even now trying to push the narrative that this is white supremacy. I think it was a New York Times article that came out either today or yesterday, and trying to say how this equates to race. And it doesn't equate to race at all. The only way it equates to race is when people try to bring up hypotheticals, saying, well, what if he was black? We already know what would happen if he was black. There was a black guy in Florida who shot at cops and was acquitted of those charges. The only charge he got was the one that had to do with the weapon, which was, possession of a weapon by a felon. Just guilty verdict. Like, there's no getting around that. We'll just have to wait and see what his sentence is in January. Oh, I mentioned Joe Biden. And then Joe Biden's statement. Let me see if I can find, no, I'm not going to try to find that real quick. But Joe Biden released a statement right after the verdict. I didn't like it when Obama did it, and I definitely don't like it when Joe Biden did it. When they offer their personal opinions or release any kind of statement on these cases, it's not proper. It's not appropriate. Don't sit here and talk about how you're trying to unify the country and then you offer your biased opinion on a case. The jury has spoken. The evidence is out there. Pull up the statement, Savvy. Okay. Joe Biden, Rittenhouse statement. Not there. Where are you? If somebody finds it, share the link in the chat. Yeah, colonoscopy. Where is it? We'll try Newsweek. CNN was not helpful. Oh God, it is like 11 o'clock. Everyone say goodnight to my friend Anne. She has to go to bed. She has to get up early, though. She's a church freak, like I once was. I cannot find the statement. I don't feel like going to the White House website because I feel like that'll take me down a rabbit hole. White House stuff. Yep, I can't find it at the moment. But basically, he was saying while the verdict in Kenosha will leave many Americans feeling angry and concerned, myself included, we must acknowledge that the jury has spoken. That's the part that, well, the entire statement in itself is inappropriate. There was no need absolutely whatsoever for him to release a statement. It's inappropriate. Stay out of state business. Just stay out of it. Like, if you want to call for unity, the best thing he could have done was either say the jury has spoken, we must respect the verdict. If you feel the need to protest or whatever, do so peacefully. And that should have been the end of it. But for him to say, while the verdict in Kenosha will leave many Americans feeling angry and concerned, myself included, that's the problem. That is the problem statement, myself included. Why are you angry and concerned? There's no reason to be angry and concerned. The evidence was very clear that this was self-defense. The fact is that Joe Biden is part of a political party that has created an environment where stuff like this just happened. Part of a political party, because we had everything that happened with George Floyd and everyone wanted to like ACAB, hate on the police, basically cut the police by the balls and just like take away a lot of their power and influence. So when people were having these riots and these large protests, the police were really kind of at a loss as to what to do. They weren't being empowered by their local governments. And so you have places like Kenosha. Who's Rob? Rob has it. Yep, I have Rob's comment, but if someone has a link, share it. Wait, I just saw it. Where were you? There you are. I really can't copy and paste out of here. We'll try NBC News. Yep. Okay. Yeah, that didn't help. But I do have a tweet from Kamala Harris. Today's verdict speaks for itself. I spent a majority of my career working to make our criminal justice system more equitable. No, she didn't. It's clear there's still a lot more work to be done. What more needs to be done? This is the problem here is you have a lot of people who are spouting off opinions, but they don't understand how the criminal system and how the justice system works, such as them saying, well, the judge is not fair. No. Here's the thing about the way our Constitution works, the way the justice system works. All of it is designed. It's supposed to be designed to benefit the defendant. So literally the entire process is designed to make sure that a fair trial is done for the defendant, because the entire process we're talking about, it's not about the victims. It's not about whoever died or whoever been wrong. It is about the defendant. So every motion that that is made, every ruling that the judge makes, every decision he makes is literally designed in such a way that it has to benefit the defendant. Now, it may not be helpful to the defendant. It might hurt the defendant as far as their case. However, it is done in such a way to respect and honor and make sure the rights of the defendant are upheld. Because if we don't respect and honor the rights of the defendant, we don't respect the process that is due process, it's not a fair trial. So everyone said, well, he's working on behalf of the defendant. Well, kind of, not quite. I mean, his job is to make sure the defendant gets a fair trial. And the the state was doing a lot of very sneaky things. I mean, people saying, well, he was benefiting the defendant. The judge literally had 2, maybe 3 opportunities to grant a mistrial without prejudice. At least 3 times, if I had to guess, 2 or 3. The first one being when he, honestly, I think maybe the Brady violation with the drone, that could have been when they tried to introduce this and then offered no foundation, nothing to support where this video came from or anything or talking about the tech. It was just introduced. And the fact that the defense didn't object to it, but Mark Richards explained why they didn't object. They didn't object because it was so grainy, you couldn't see anything. And as it turns out that the quality of video they got versus what the state got was 2 completely different videos. This was brought up in a motion to dismiss, which the judge completely, he didn't ignore. I think the judge knew an acquittal was coming. It was very clear from the very beginning that an acquittal was coming. I think the judge knew that. And the defense pushed motions to dismiss. I want to say they mentioned it once and then they officially submitted a motion to dismiss. But the judge said he didn't want to make a ruling. He wanted to see what the jury would do with a verdict. So we have the state when they tried to disrespect Kyle's Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, try to challenge him on, okay, why didn't you speak afterwards, after the charges or whatever, and say, why didn't you speak up before? You can't do that. You can't try to use his Fifth Amendment right against him. His Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, you can't use that against him. Like, that could have been a mistrial right there. The state trying to introduce evidence that in a pretrial hearing was deemed inadmissible without someone first opening the door, without Kyle opening the door to this evidence, that could have been a mistrial right there. And then the third thing would have been the drone video. Once they realized that the state had actually sent them a completely different file that was of a lesser quality, that could have been a mistrial right there. The judge literally had 3 separate opportunities to declare a mistrial without prejudice in favor of the defense, but he didn't. And I think he did that. He didn't because, one, I don't think this judge likes to make those decisions. I think he doesn't like it when the decision is in his hands. And I think he understood almost too late how important this case was and how out of hand things had gotten. I don't think he realized just how high profile this case was. And I don't think he wanted that decision in his hands, but I think he probably figured what a lot of people figured because he's privy to a lot of things the jury did not see. So a lot of the things the jury was sent out of the room for, he sees all of it. All the stuff from like pre-trial motions, he saw all of that as well. So there's a lot of things he's privy to that the jury is not privy to. And I think he probably knew and had a feeling from the get-go that an acquittal was coming. And I think he was hoping that an acquittal would give him an out. He wouldn't have to make these tough decisions because he knew an acquittal. Like, there was no other way but an acquittal. So to sit here and claim the judge was biased when the judge literally had opportunities to dismiss this case with prejudice and didn't take them, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not buying the bias at all. And then people saying, well, he wouldn't let them be called victims. Well, you can't. I mean, if the whole thing is not saying, it's not in question whether or not Kyle shot these 3 individuals. We know he shot them. The question is whether or not he shot them in self-defense. And if he's claiming he shot them in self-defense, and then the question is, was a crime committed or not? Because just because you shot somebody doesn't mean you committed a crime. I know that sounds weird, but if it's self-defense, that's not a crime. And if it's not a crime, then they're not victims. That means Kyle is the victim. Kyle is a survivor. So if the question is, was a crime committed, you don't want to call the people who are deceased victims because that would be prejudicial against the defendant because it assumes guilt and he is innocent until proven guilty. Y'all keep talking to Antoine, I'm sorry. I have an uncle named Antoine. We don't call him Antoine though. Wait, is his name Antoine? We call him Peanut. Yep, his name's Antoine. I had to think of his full name in my head, but yep, we call him Peanut. What do I do for a living? I technically work in STEM. I try to keep the name of my company as far away from social media as possible because people are ruthless for no reason. But I don't think if you were to reach out to my job and say, look what she's doing, I'm pretty sure my job is aware. At least I've had people that I work with say, hey, isn't this you on TikTok? I'm like, no, that's not me. I have no idea what you're talking about. Stand your ground law. Look it up. That is from someone named Grodo. I have no idea what's going on in the chat. What do you mean by stand your ground? The prosecution. Because this was not a stand your ground. I'm not sure where this conversation is going. Y'all are talking a lot. I'm going into STEM. I'm nervous, excited. Look it, okay, so I applied for a job and I got it. My intention was not to go into STEM. I was never, this is not the job I saw myself doing. I went to college for film. Told myself I wanted to work in film production. Hated film production. Well, no, I take that back. I hated setting up lights. I love the overall process of filmmaking. I hated setting up lights. So I figured, and I didn't want to change my major because I was having so much fun doing what I was doing, and I loved what I was learning. So I just switched to media writing. So I just learned how to write films instead. Yeah, I never got a job in that field at all. I've had a job in many different fields, mainly customer service. That's basically what I do is customer service, but it is for a STEM kind of company. In which I do have to work with software, which is not something I ever saw myself doing. Conversation is about the fact that you do not have to wait for someone to physically harm you in order to defend yourself. Correct. Okay, let's talk about that for a hot second. It's like 10:27 and I haven't had ice cream yet. And I usually always have ice cream before I go to bed. I'm a whole child. So you do not, that was something else. Correct me if I'm wrong, y'all, but that was something else the prosecution tried to bring up and try to make it seem like, basically trying to like lead the jury astray and try to make it seem as if because Kyle wasn't hurt, there were no issues. And that is the whole point of self-defense, is preventing great bodily harm or death. So you don't have to wait. Here's the thing with self-defense. It's about what you reasonably believe. I reasonably believe that your actions are about to cause me great bodily harm or death. You're running towards me and reaching for my gun. I don't have to know what your intentions are. You could be just trying to scare me. The beautiful thing about self-defense is that I don't have to guess. I don't have to ask questions. That's why we have the Castle Doctrine, and that's why the Castle Doctrine is written the way it is. It basically says that if someone breaks into your home, you don't have to know why. You don't have to wait to find out if they're armed. You have the right to assume that if they break into your house and they're not supposed to be there, you have the right to assume they mean you great death, great bodily harm or death, and you can act accordingly. And this is the same thing with self-defense. I reasonably believe your actions could cause me great bodily harm or death. I reasonably believe that your actions could cause me great bodily harm or death. That is the law as it is written. I don't have to wait for you to hit me. I don't have to wait to get hurt. I don't have to wait for you to state your intentions. Do I believe that your actions could cause me great bodily harm or death? That's it. What I reasonably believe could happen if I allow your actions to follow through. That's it. Stand your ground is about retreating and the duty to retreat. I believe Wisconsin is also a stand your ground state, but stand your ground doesn't apply to this case. I have yet to really see a case that where stand your ground applies. I know it's helpful in a lot of domestic violence cases, but I know the big deal was Trayvon Martin in 2013, people trying to claim that was stand your ground. That was actually not a stand your ground case either, because stand your ground basically means you do not have a duty to retreat. So basically you're able to retreat, but you don't have to. So if you and I meet on the sidewalk and we're just talking and out of nowhere you punch me in the face, stand your ground says I don't have to retreat. I can punch you, I can defend myself. I can meet force with force. That's what stand your ground says. However, Kyle retreated, so stuff stand your ground doesn't apply. And then with Trayvon Martin, Trayvon had Zimmerman pinned to the ground, punching me in the face, bashing his head into the concrete. He's not able to retreat, so stand your ground also doesn't apply. So he's not standing his ground. I mean, he's literally not even standing. Trayvon has him pinned to the ground. So that's not even a stand your ground case. That was just textbook self-defense. That whole case is just tragic. The other thing that they suggested that had me fired up was that Kyle should have called 911 instead of trying to help people or stop fires. True. Kyle did not call 911 after he shot Rosenbaum. I mean, why would he? He was there all night and he saw what was happening the night before. He heard from people from the night before. He knew calling 911 was just going to be a waste of time. He would have gotten a response from police quicker had he been able to get to the police before the mob got to him. It probably would have been hours before the police responded had he called 911. Instead of, oh wait. Yeah, I'm hungry. The other thing is that Kyle should have called 911 instead of trying to help people or stop fires. No, same thing applies. The police really weren't available to help with any of that stuff. That's why people were out there taking it into their own hands. I mean, apparently Gage Grosskreutz was out there for the same reason as a medic, trying to help people, with any kind of medical need they may have. I mean, had the police been available, the stuff the night before wouldn't have been happening. Kyle should have called 911 instead of trying to help people or stop fires. Like, what do? You see something on fire, you have access to a fire extinguisher. You're supposed to just let it burn. That doesn't even make any sense. That's not even like, there's no American logic in that. What ice cream do I have? I have, what is it called? I have to look it up. I have two things. I always have ice cream on hand at my house. I usually have like 3 or 4 different things of ice cream because I like variety, even though it's not really variety. It's just like 3 different versions of the same thing. But I have ice cream sandwiches from Walmart. I have ice cream bars from Walmart. I have Halo Top. I have a little bit of Halo Top cookies and cream ice cream left. And then I have an ice cream that I recently discovered called Enlightened. They make pints. I've been on a weight loss journey since March, and I love ice cream. So I've been on a calorie deficit. So I'm eating a certain amount of calories a day. And the thing about a calorie deficit is you can pretty much eat whatever you want and lose weight, as long as you maintain your calories. And so one thing I tell people when people's like, what's the thing you recommend? If you are used to doing a certain thing, like eating dessert every night, stick to that. Like if you like dessert, eat your dessert. So I love ice cream. I love ice cream at night. That's like my favorite thing. So I always have some kind of ice cream in my house, and I'm always trying to find like lower calorie versions of ice cream. So I haven't had Ben & Jerry's in months, which I don't know if I'm ever going to eat Ben & Jerry's again. I mean, I don't do protest or boycott, but I don't know if that's a company that I could support right now. So I found other ways. Halo Top isn't too bad. I like Halo Top, but Enlightened, I found that at a Rouse's. People from Louisiana, how do you pronounce their grocery store? I know you know, because I can't get it right. Called Enlightened, and they make like 400 calorie pints. So I'll eat one of those, like half of one night and then half of it another. So I always have ice cream. I love ice cream. Y'all keep yelling at Antoine. Antoine, what have you done? I'm gonna read a couple of them couple more of your comments, and then we're gonna call it a night. This has been fun. I've enjoyed this. I like this. Bluebell. Girl, I can't eat Bluebell. I mean, I can't eat Bluebell. Like I said, I'm trying to lose weight. I'm on a calorie deficit. And I weigh all of my food because that's the best way to do it. Because if you're going to be on a calorie deficit and you're, counting calories, you weigh all of your food. And so, like, there is absolutely no way I can enjoy Bluebell on a calorie deficit. If I can't eat Bluebell the way I want to eat Bluebell, I can't. I just don't do it at all. That's like with me with peanut butter. Peanut butter is amazing. Peanut butter is a healthy food. However, one serving of peanut butter is like 2 tablespoons. Like, no, I don't eat peanut butter like that. I eat like globs of peanut butter at a time. If you're taking up for Kyle, then you're condoning murder. No, does not, how do I explain this? There is a legal definition for murder, and this does not fit the bill. Where's Wikipedia? No, Law Dictionary. Dictionary.law.com, my bad. So, Law Dictionary defines murder, the killing of a human being by a sane person with the intent, malice, aforethought, prior intention to kill the particular victim or anyone who gets in the way, and with no legal excuse or authority. In those clear circumstances, this is first-degree murder by statute. Many states consider a killing in which there is torture, movement of the person before the killing, kidnapping, or the death of a police officer or prison guard, or it was an incident to another crime, as during a holdup or rape, to be first-degree murder with or without premeditation and with malice presumed. Second-degree murder is such a killing without premeditation as in the heat of passion or in a sudden quarrel or fight. Malice in second-degree murder may be implied from a death due to the reckless lack of concern for the life of others. Okay, so in order for it to be murder, malice. That is your key word right there, is malice. So here's the thing. So murder has an actual definition to it. Homicide is something entirely. Homicide just really means that one person killed another person. That's the cause of death was a person by another person. Kyle was never charged with murder. His charges as follows: reckless homicide, recklessly endangering safety, intentional homicide against Anthony Huber. He was never charged for murder. These words have very specific definitions in a legal sense. If he's found not guilty, and the reason for which he was found not guilty is by self-defense, it's not murder. It's homicide, because one person killed another human being, but it's not murder. If I kill you in self-defense, it's not murder. Tragic, sad, but not murder. So no. So to give me my last final thoughts, just to kind of sum it all up, people need to stop listening to the media. The media is not acting in the best interest of the populace. They are acting in their own best interest. I don't know what game they're playing. I don't know what prize they're trying to win. And I don't even know why they're not backtracking everything they've said that was completely incorrect. That's been incorrect for over a year. There were some new things that we learned. I think one new things that I learned in the trial was that Kyle was already in Kenosha. I knew he drove himself to Kenosha. I knew he worked in Kenosha. I did not know that he had already been in Kenosha, like he was there the night before. I didn't know that. I also didn't know that he had family in Kenosha, which didn't make a difference to me. I mean, people can cross state lines however they choose. There were a lot of people there that night who were rioting, tearing things up that crossed state lines. But I mean, everyone's talking about he crossed state lines. The first thing I did was go to the map app on my phone and look up Antioch, Illinois, and see how close it was to Kenosha. Oh, it's like a 15-20-minute drive. That's like someone who lives in Indian Land, South Carolina, going to downtown Charlotte. Like, what difference does it make? They're all part of the same metro area. Like, it's all one community. They're just suburbs of each other. Doesn't make a difference. It's like there's no difference. But yeah, people need to stop listening to the media. People need to stop looking at headlines. And the headlines during the trial were some of the absolute worst. Like, I'm watching the trial, like literally listening to the testimony, and then I go on Twitter and I see the headlines. I'm like, that is not, they were literal lies. Like, that's not what happened. And I think when it became very clear that the narrative was not what they were purporting it to be from a year ago, they tried to create a new narrative. And the new narrative became, well, it's an unfair judge. But either way, they're trying to manipulate the American people into thinking whatever they want and not into believing the truth. And the truth of the fact is that Kyle was put in an impossible position where he had to make a decision, them or me. Now you can argue and say, well, he shouldn't have been there. It doesn't matter. Hindsight is 2020. We can't go back in time. We can't make him not be there. No one should have been there. No one should have been there. They were tearing down buildings and setting things on fire. They were rioting. They weren't, marching for Black lives. They were setting things on fire. This wasn't the protest. This was the riot. This is when things were getting ugly. This is people who were boarding up their businesses and praying when they woke up in the morning that it would still be there. That's what this was. Say, oh, he shouldn't have been there. No one should have been there. And I think we have a lot of the media to blame for this. If media had been honest about what happened with Jacob Blake in the first place, we probably wouldn't have seen the riots the way we saw them that night. Kyle probably wouldn't have had a reason to be in that part of Kenosha. He would have been hanging out with Dominic Black and his friends, and we wouldn't even know his name. Kyle should have never left the building he was supposed to be guarding. This would have never happened. Rosenbaum shouldn't have chased Kyle. Rosenbaum was the one who set off the events. Had Rosenbaum just left him alone, none of this would have happened. Because that's why this happened. Rosenbaum decided to chase Kyle Rittenhouse for reasons unknown, decided that he was going to take this child out, and that's what started the chain of events. Gage Grosskreutz knew this kid was trying to get to the police, and instead of helping him get to the police, he decided to join the mob. Kyle has a right to move freely, yes. So there's some people say, well, if he hadn't have been there, none of this would have happened. Kyle wasn't the only person that made decisions that night that set the events in motion. Had Rosenbaum decided to stay home and not tear things up, because he wasn't there for Black lives. He was there to tear, pardon my French, tear shit up. He was there to cause trouble. He was literally there to cause trouble. So was Anthony, so was Gage. They were literally there to cause trouble. 4 people made decisions that night, and 4 people's lives were changed forever. But at the end of the day, had Rosenbaum not chased Kyle, every one of them would be alive. Because it was his decision to chase Kyle that set all of these events in motion. Kyle had a right to be in Kenosha. Kyle had a right to be at that business where he was asked to be. Kyle had a right to carry the gun. And Kyle had an absolute right to put out fires. Kyle had an absolute right to help people with medical aid. Rosenbaum did not have a right to attack Kyle. Bottom line. Now, if you believe, well, he shouldn't have been there in the first place, we can't go back in time and we can't change it. But at the end of the day, Kyle is an 18-year-old kid who has to get on with the rest of his life, who has to deal with the PTSD of the event, who has to forgive himself. And that's going to be the hard part. He has a long road ahead of him, so keep him in your prayers. But he's taking college classes. He wants to be a nurse. Go for it, dude. They need more men in the nursing field anyway. We need more nurses. That's why we're still dealing with this COVID pandemic mess in the first place. That's what they won't tell you when they're talking about, bed shortages. A lot of that is nursing staff shortages, because you need so many nurses per bed, but that's a whole separate conversation we can have. Oh yeah, he'll probably need to change his name. But my honest opinion is my heart goes out to Kyle. He had to make a decision, his life or theirs. I hate that he had to make that decision. I hate that he went through all of this. And I hope he sues everybody and their mama into oblivion. And I hope there are consequences for the state, because I believe this prosecution was malicious. They had evidence from the very beginning that this was self-defense. I know they knew this wasn't a case that needed to be tried, because they had to stretch so many truths, tell so many lies in open court just to try to make a case, and it didn't work. But no, there need to be consequences for the prosecution. There need to be consequences for the media. And I hope Kyle gets filthy freaking rich. I am looking forward to. No, did y'all hear about Tucker Carlson? Sneaky devil that he is, was filming Rittenhouse during the entire trial and after, and has a documentary coming out on Fox News Nation in December. He's airing an interview with Kyle on Monday on Fox News. But he was literally filming behind the scenes the entire time and didn't announce it until after the verdict. Like, you sneaky devil. But like, he has to be a good dude. You have to be, no one could, for your staff to keep a secret that well, you have to be some kind of a good dude. That's just my thoughts. But those are my thoughts on the Kyle Rittenhouse case. It was malicious prosecution. He never should have been charged in the first place. This was a clear case of self-defense, and self-defense is protected by law. This was political. They decided to make a political example out of a 17-year-old, and I hope there is reckoning to pay for that, because they could have ruined this child's life over lies. But that's just me. So, Nick Sandman said he would help Kyle. The fact that the media literally has not learned anything from that case. I just want the media to go back to reporting the news and reporting the facts and letting the people decide how they feel about the facts. And this is something I talk about on my YouTube channel, not my YouTube channel, on my TikTok quite a bit with respect to, I've talked about this recently with respect to like CRT and teaching, is that we have a culture where people want to teach children how to feel about history, not how to think critically about history. The media needs to just go back to reporting the facts and not trying to put on a performance and create a good show. The fact that MSNBC literally allowed that man from the NAACP to come on and spout all that racist crap, that they even give Joy Reid a job, as racist as she is. It's mind-boggling. But yeah. But anyway, those are my thoughts on the Kyle Rittenhouse case. I'll probably talk a little bit more about it on my TikTok. We should do this again, y'all. This whole live thing, it's kind of fun. It's cool to talk to y'all and interact with y'all live instead of, trying to read all the different comments that come in on Instagram and TikTok and even YouTube. I miss all the comments that come in on YouTube. I used to get notifications. I don't get notifications for them anymore, and I forget to check. That's my bad. If y'all leave comments on my YouTube and I don't respond, I'm sorry. I read them eventually. It happens, but it takes a while. But any final thoughts? Any last thing you want to say? You got 60 seconds. And then I need to figure out what kind of ice cream I want, because it's almost 11 o'clock here at night. And I'm elderly. I need to go to bed. This is cool. Thanks, Savvy. You are a gem. I am hungry. That's what I am. Would like your view on Gage. Are you talking about his lawsuit, or who said that? Kylie Helmick. Elaborate. What do you mean? Antoine, who even are you? How'd you get here? What's on your shirt? Golden Girls. I got this shirt at Torrid. Torrid is a plus size store. I think I'm gonna wear this shirt to church. I literally just put this on for the podcast because the shirt I was wearing would not have been appropriate at all. Because when I'm out and about on the Saturday, I like to be comfortable. I don't like wearing a whole lot of clothes. That makes me sound skanky. Not like I like to have it all hanging out, but like I don't like anything heavy on my skin. My favorite Golden Girl, Sophia. Obviously. Who's Antoine from TikTok? Antoine means Jesus. I seen you on live and saw that you was talking about the person who I got in an argument with last night after I seen they were guilty and not being charged, so I came to see what's up. I have no idea what you're talking about or what that even means. But glad you're here. I mean, sincerely, honestly. Hope to see you again. Stick around, subscribe. We don't have to agree on anything. Kyle, I asked you to explain yourself, and if you did, I completely missed it. Now I gotta scroll. Oh, the one where he is apparently suing the city for that. Yeah, no. He messed up with that one. So he neglected to tell the police about, there was some information about the gun that he neglected to tell. I think he neglected to tell the police that he had a gun, even though there's like video and photo evidence of him not just holding the gun, but pointing the gun at Kyle. And all of that came out on trial. Not only that he had a gun, but he was not legally allowed to carry said weapon. Yeah, if I were the city of Kenosha, I would literally just show up to whatever civil trial and just play his testimony. I mean, I think Kyle's acquittal does not help him whatsoever because you're innocent until proven guilty, and he was not proven guilty. So that all they're left with is self-defense. I don't think he's going to get that money. He deserves none of it. He made the decision to point a gun at someone, and he found out. But yeah, he tried. He really tried. But no, I honestly think Gage should face some kind of charge for pointing a gun at him. All right, y'all. I'm gonna go to bed. Thank you so much for coming to my TED Talk. Thanks for hanging. We're gonna do this again sometime. So that right there where it says this is Savvy, that is my username on TikTok, Instagram, here on YouTube. I do have a Twitter. It's like this is Savvy 1 or something. I don't really use it. Like I post on there once in a blue moon. I do have a podcast. It's coming back, y'all. I promise the podcast is coming back. I need time to sit down. I might actually talk more about Kyle Rittenhouse and my feelings and whatnot on the podcast because I'm one of those people where more of my thoughts will come out as the days progress. And I'll definitely be talking about it some more on TikTok. Next live should be the Maxwell case. I need to get up to date on the case, that case. That entire thing is, no, we do not want Kamala for president. Here's the thing with Kamala Harris is that Kamala Harris was chosen as the VP not because she is so qualified, but because she is so dark-skinned. I said what I said. Identity politics is why she was chosen. They were hoping they could nab the Black vote with Kamala Harris because, you know, all of a sudden she's Asian American now because, you know, she was like a president for like, well, she had presidential powers for like a whole 45 minutes while Biden was under anesthesia for his colonoscopy. I will be in Charlotte actually Christmas. I made a decision this year to not travel to Charlotte as much just because I want to be in the city more. So I've only been, so when I go home for Christmas, it'll be only be twice. So, but yeah, Kamala Harris was only chosen to be the VP because she is not white. She is not even African American. Technically, she's Jamaican and Indian. Beautiful combination. I'm not gonna lie. I think that's an amazing combination. Any kind of like this complexion mixed with Indian, I think is some of the most beautiful babies. But she was literally at the bottom of the Democratic primary totem pole. One of the lowest ranking Democrats to perform for the primary. She was not popular by any means. She was not a fan favorite. People did not like her. She was not chosen because she is so qualified. She was honestly, when it comes to issues of like criminal, the fact that she has the audacity to talk about she wanted to make things more equitable when she was a prosecutor. She was a corrupt prosecutor. Like she was the antithesis of Black Lives Matter when she was a prosecutor. No, she would make a terrible president. And now she's trying to claim, or her people are trying to claim that racism is the reason why her approval ratings are so low. Her approval ratings were always going to be low once people remembered why they didn't want to vote for her in the primary in the first place. But yeah. She really did. She found every opportunity when she was running in the primary to call Biden a racist, and all of a sudden he wasn't a racist, and now they're realizing, well, maybe he's racist again because Biden doesn't want to take responsibility for anything. I agree with their sentiment that Biden is basically using Kamala as a scapegoat. I do agree with that, and I do think that was kind of dirty. That's kind of dirty on his part. But no, she should never, absolutely never be president. If there is a Democrat, because I am registered Republican, I think I'm more libertarian as I've gotten older. I don't know. I haven't really sat down and like fleshed it out in a while to figure out like what to like re-examine all of what I believe and what category I fit in. But I identify more as a conservative. But the only Democrat I would consider voting for is that lady whose name I literally cannot pronounce. Tulsi, what's her name? She's just based. Jump Kick Man was charged. Y'all, I'm supposed to be going to bed, but I like talking to y'all. This is fun, and some of y'all are still here, so why not? Okay, this is the last thing, and then I'm going to bed. I don't see anything about him being charged, but I do see where they did identify him. And he claims he tried to go to the prosecutors to get a deal in exchange for his testimony. They declined. Why do you think they declined? The state, I think I said this earlier, the state is not going to bring forth a witness that doesn't help their case. And whatever it is he had to say did not help them, but probably hurt them. And instead of passing that information along to the defense as they should have, they kept it quiet. And they probably said, if you just keep your mouth shut, we won't charge you. If I were Kyle Rittenhouse's team, I know Kyle Rittenhouse wants to get on with his life, but if I were his team, I would look into, I mean, I'm a shark like that also. Like I'm a dog with a bone. I would look into it. Yes, Tulsi Gabbard. I would give her a second glance. I love, she just doesn't play games. And I appreciate that about her. I don't agree with everything she has a stance on, which is fine by me. But it's her willingness to work with people across the aisle, and it's her willingness to just be objective and to see things for what they are and call it as she sees it. To me, that's like, I can work with that. I can work with that. The willingness to work with people, like even if we disagree on different economic issues, the fact that you're willing to work with people, you're willing to listen, and you're willing to like come to some kind of compromise, you're willing to sit down and talk about the issues. Like that means more to me than you and I agreeing on certain issues. But that's just me. Gibbard, no, don't even try to, correct me on pronunciation. You can correct me 1,000 times. I'm never going to get it. Ann is in Charlotte. She said, ice cream, bed, church. You will have to face Ann. Ann's in Charlotte. Ann can't do nothing. We are 700 plus miles apart. All right, y'all. Good night. Thank you so much for coming. I've appreciated. Yeah, I'm tired. Peace out. End.